After spending last week around the Buffalo Bills, I want to share my prevailing thought at every position today on Locked On Bills.
You are Locked On Bills, your daily Buffalo Bills podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Bills Mafia? It's Joe Marino, author of Go Bills and Buffalo's Run, also the co-host of the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast, and I'm your host of Locked On Bills. Want to thank you for making Locked On Bills your first listen every day, and a big welcome and shout out to our everydayers. You know who you are. Those of you who never miss a single episode, I appreciate y'all being here very, very much. I'd also like to invite you to subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. As playoffs wind down, the sports stop sporting like we want them to, but this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a booster bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone, every day, all summer long. Just visit FanDuel.com to get started. Well, folks, welcome in. As you know, I spent the last week around the Buffalo Bills, 5 days at training camp, and I have a lot to say about that experience. And so I thought one of the ways that I could really get my thoughts out there was to have a podcast like the one we're going to have today that considers each position group and what my prevailing thought is for each one. And so that's what we're going to do today. Now, before we get there, I have something very exciting to share with you. I'm going to be part of a new tradition, and that is the Rally on the River, which is the day before kickoff festival at Buffalo Riverworks. And this is going to be one heck of an event. It's Saturday, September 7th, which is the day before the Bills host the Arizona Cardinals for week 1 of the 2024 NFL season. And we are going to have a Rally on the River. It's going to be awesome. First of all, if you haven't been to Buffalo Riverworks, the place is incredible. It's a massive property with so much to do. They've got hatchet throwing. They've got zip lining, a Ferris wheel, kayaking, massive event rooms, skating rinks. There is just so much going on there. And there's going to be one heck of an event that I'm really excited to be part of. And again, that is September 7th, the day before the Bills host the Arizona Cardinals for the Rally on the River, a new tradition at Buffalo Riverworks, free admission for all ages. There's going to be live performances, including one from me. I'm doing a podcast there at 3 o'clock. We're going to do a show, and I'm very excited about that. There's going to be live performances from Strictly Hip and Scott Salaney. There's going to be Chalk Fest, which is super cool. I learned all about Chalk Fest. I had a chance to kind of tour the facility last week, and inside the grain silos, there's just tons of like cement, and all the best chalk artists from the area are going to come in there and do artwork, and the artwork is incredible. I saw some of this from the previous Chalk Fest. You got to see these pictures that these people are able to draw with chalk. It's absolutely incredible. There's going to be a buffalo that you could ride, like a mechanical buffalo, like you ride the bull. You're going to ride the buffalo. Local Buffalo vendors, tailgate food, drink specials, tailgate games, so much going on. I'm looking forward to spending the day there and, of course, doing the podcast at 3 o'clock. So make us part of your kickoff weekend in Western New York for the Rally on the River, the day before kickoff festival at Buffalo Riverworks. Cannot wait to be part of that, and now excited to share that news with you. So please make that part of your kickoff weekend events. All right, let's get into it. Spent a week with the Bills. Here's my prevailing thought at every position. We'll start with quarterback. And what's going to be hard about this entire conversation is I have so much to say about every position group, but I really want to focus on that number one thought. And for me at quarterback, it's Josh Allen's command and confidence. I talked a lot about that last week on this podcast, but it is undeniable to see the way that Josh Allen is operating. And I took a lot of questions throughout the offseason about Josh Allen and everything being new around him in terms of Joe Brady being year one of the offensive coordinator and tons of new receivers around him, and no Stephon Diggs, right? No Gabe Davis. And the response that I typically gave was something along the lines of, I'm really excited to see how Josh Allen attacks this, because I think there could be a lot of freedom in how he takes control of this offense without the idea of having to funnel 150, 160 targets to Stephon Diggs, and then also, making sure that Gabe gets his. This is definitely an everybody eats situation. And I know that that's cliche, but you just watch this team and you believe it. And the point man for all of this is Josh Allen, and how quickly he's taking control with the newness around him. He's a star quarterback. It's a franchise quarterback. You expect him to take control, but to the level that he has under these circumstances is just very impressive to me. And I'm very impressed with just the amount of confidence he has in throwing the ball to all these new weapons. And I think you can look back through different players that the Bills have onboarded under Josh Allen, and there's times where it takes a little time. Now, certainly in the case of a Stephon Diggs, things took off very quickly. But if you think about working in a Dalton Kincaid last year, or working in an Emmanuel Sanders, or even like a Trent Sherfield or a Deontay Hardy in the roles maybe you thought those players would have, sometimes it never happened, and sometimes it took some time. Josh Allen has hit the ground running with these guys. His command, his confidence is incredible. And I also think that there's a big-time energy component with Josh Allen. Not that Josh Allen doesn't always bring energy, but things that I noticed him doing during practice this year that maybe I didn't recognize, or it didn't stand out to me as much in the past. But like, for example, if Ray Davis is carrying the ball in a team rep and he breaks a long run, Josh Allen is sprinting down the field and trailing the ball and pushing guys to finish the run. And you saw this happen with different players that caught the football. Josh Allen is sprinting down the field, and you could tell he's trying to set a standard of energy and just pushing guys like I probably haven't seen him do in the past. It was really fun to watch Josh Allen this week. Now, look, there's other things I can get into. I think the quarterback depth looks so much better to me, but it's Josh Allen's command, confidence, energy. The way he's executing has me pretty fired up about what he's going to do this year. At wide receiver, the prevailing thought is the versatility of this group. Joe Brady has talked a lot about, we don't have positions, we have concepts, and everybody knows what to do. And when you watch this team practice and you see all the different players that are put in all the different spots and how they're used in so many different ways, the versatility just pops. You think about a guy like Khalil Shakir. People say slot receiver. Well, I think that is such a silly way to box him in. Most of the stuff that I saw Khalil Shakir doing in practice was winning down the field, winning in the middle of the field with depth, right? It wasn't just, all right, we're going to ISO you up on a linebacker and pick a side, choice route, either break in or break out, read the leverage and get open. No, Khalil Shakir is down the field, seam routes, wheel routes, and catching the ball with a pretty significant average depth of target. So if you think that Khalil Shakir is just like Cole Beasley or Wes Welker or just a little jitterbug slot, you have miscast him in a big way. Keon Coleman, if you think he's just an X receiver, you've miscast him. He does that. He also plays from the slot quite a bit as well. Inside, outside threat down the field, winning leverage battles in terms of some quick throws, some screen game opportunities. It's all there. Curtis Samuel, the definition of versatile. Handoffs from the backfield, quick routes, perimeter screens, down the field. It's all there, used in so many different ways. Even Mack Hollins is a big-bodied X receiver that his involvement in the run game as an insert blocker, functioning in tight alignments, it's a big part of what this team wants to be. And so there's so much versatility in how these players are going to be used, the ways that they're going to line up. And I think it just really is everywhere in the guys that I perceive to be the Bills' top 4 wide receivers right now. At tight end, my prevailing thought is that Dalton Kincaid is going to catch so many passes. He's the go-to guy for this offense. Everybody wants to know who the number 1 wide receiver is. It's Dalton Kincaid. He is so much of what this passing game wants to be. And the stuff that I wanted to see more of last year, which was involvement in the red zone, more down the field opportunities, it's all there. It's no longer, hey, Dalton Kincaid, get into space. We're going to throw you the football and turn and run. It's what you saw towards the end of the season with down the field targets with red zone utilization. It pops in a huge way. I think that he is primed to just catch, I don't know, push for 100 catches. I think he's going to be 120 plus targets. The production's going to be there for Dalton Kincaid this season. And so much of this offensive passing game is going to be funneled through him. Now, I think there's stuff to get into with the depth, and I've certainly hyped up Zach Davidson and Quentin Morris, but it's Kincaid. He's in every imaginable way, he appears primed to take that big step and potentially develop into a star tight end for the Buffalo Bills. All right, folks, coming up on the other side of it, we're going to get into running backs, offensive line, and defensive front seven. Be sure to stick with me. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. When your schedule is packed with kids' activities, big work projects, and more, it's easy to let your priorities slip. Even when we know what makes us happy, it's hard to make time for it. But when you feel like you have no time for yourself, non-negotiables like therapy are more important than ever. If you're thinking of starting therapy, be sure to give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. And it's so helpful for people. It's not just for those who have experienced major trauma. It's about helping you learn how to become the best version of yourself. So all you do is fill out a brief questionnaire. That'll get you matched with a licensed therapist, and you can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Never skip therapy day with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. All right, folks, next up, I want to talk running backs. And I think the story here, the prevailing thought is Ray Davis. Of course, James Cook's the guy. He's going to have a ton of opportunity to make a lot of plays. But Ray Davis is a fourth-round pick, kind of getting a feel for where he's at and what the role is that the team envisions for him. I can see it being pretty significant. And you go back to last year, and James Cook was really the guy. And I wonder how much of that was rooted in Damian Harris being part of the plan and then having an early season injury, and then Latavius Murray, the wheels kind of falling off. I mean, after James Cook, Josh Allen had the second most carries, and then it was Latavius Murray with 79 carries. I think Ray Davis is probably in line for 100-plus carries this year, maybe pushing 120 touches total. And I think that's significant. I think Ty Johnson's going to factor into the mix here. But with him having the hamstring injury that he suffered earlier in camp, Ray Davis has had a lot of opportunity, not just to work with the second team, but work with the first team. He's got a lot of reps with Josh Allen behind the Bills' starting offensive line. And I think that only positions him even better to have a role, a meaningful role as a rookie. And so the receiving profile really pops. I thought that was the best thing that he did, was run routes and catch the football during training camp practices, but he also carried the ball quite a bit. And I think his unique style with a dense build with a lot of power components that contrasts well with James Cook, who's more of a slasher runner that doesn't bring as much physicality to the table. I like the complementary skill sets, and I like how Ray Davis can factor in on every down, right? Whether it's pass pro, inside running, short yardage, catching the football, he can do a lot for this offense. And I think you're going to see that year one role be quite significant for rookie Ray Davis. When it comes to offensive line, my prevailing thought is all about sorting out the final few spots. I think you have 7 offensive linemen that are pretty locked into their role. Your starters, Dawkins, Edwards, McGovern, Torrance Brown, of course, they're locked in. It's been cool that they're a group that was healthy last year, and you're seeing more and more reps built up this summer where we talk about offensive line, 5 guys working together as one. It's nice to see so much continuity between this group. Then I think the top 2 backups are pretty clear to me. Ryan Vandemark is your top tackle. Alec Anderson, your top interior player, in terms of guys that are going to get jerseys on game days and be the first guy off the bench. So that's 7. I think the Bills will roster 9, maybe 10 offensive linemen. And so that gets you into this conversation where there are 2 or 3 spots available for the likes of Cedric Van Pran-Granger, Will Clapp, Tylen Grable, and Lyle Collins. I think of that list, probably 2 don't make it. And I think Cedric Van Granger as a draft pick is pretty locked in. I feel like the team's pretty high on him. And then that gets you down to Clapp, Grable, and Collins. And the name that really pops for me is Grable. Grable, 7th-round pick out of UCF, a lot of length, a lot of athleticism, a lot of untapped potential. And based on Cedric Van Granger being a guy that I think is in line for making the team, and Alec Anderson is a multi-spot backup, I feel like they're going to want more tackle depth. You know, Ryan Vandermark, certainly the swing tackle, he was that all last season, but Grable as a true tackle type player, I think that helps him a ton. Now, Will Clapp as an experienced veteran interior player, that helps, but he doesn't give you that tackle ability. And then there's the Lyle Collins conversation where I think he's cooked. You know, I don't know. I don't think the movement skills are there. I don't think the bend is there. I don't think the tackle ability is really there. I think he's probably a guard only and a backup. So I don't see the appeal there, and he's already hurt. So is it 3 spots available? Is it 2? Which guys make it? I think Van Granger and Grable are probably the leaders in the clubhouse, but I'm not sleeping on Clapp, but I do think the top 7 are pretty locked in. When it comes to the interior defensive line, what I have written down is 4 or 5. Do the Bills roster 4 or do they roster 5? You know, that's the thing about these roster conversations is you can't go heavy everywhere. You can't keep 6 receivers and 4 tight ends and 10 offensive linemen and 5 interior defensive linemen and 6 edges and 7 linebackers, like, and 6 outside corners. It just doesn't work that way. You only can keep 53. So when Sean McDermott and Brandon Beane and all the executives and coaches across the league talk about a numbers game, it really is a numbers game because you just can't keep them all as much as you want to. And so will the Bills keep 4 or 5 defensive tackles? You know the top 3, Oliver, Daquan Jones, and Austin Johnson. Then Dewayne Carter as a draft pick, as a 3rd-round draft pick, he's locked in, right? So that's 4. And then do you have space for Deshawn Williams? And Deshawn Williams, I think, is one of the most overlooked players that the Bills added this offseason. And he's getting second-team reps over Dewayne Carter. I think right now he's probably a better option than Dewayne Carter. But do you have room for both? That's where it gets tricky. Can you get Deshawn Williams back on your practice squad? I don't know. Probably not, to be honest with you. He started 40-plus games over the last 4 years, has pretty good tape. I feel like there's certainly be plenty of teams that would want to have him. And so how do you manage that? Are you okay not having him, knowing that you could probably get an Elianku back on your practice squad? It's kind of fascinating. Does the presence of a Dewan Smoot and his ability to reduce and play inside, does that help you feel better about rostering only 4? Fascinating conversation. But I think it really comes down to Deshawn Williams. Does he do enough during the preseason and during camp to inspire the Bills to keep that 5th interior player? At defensive end, I think you have a big-time battle for 1 spot. Top 4, to me, locked in. Greg Rousseau, AJ Epinesa, Von Miller, Dewan Smoot. And then I think you have 1 spot for Kingsley Jonathan, Javon Solomon, Casey Toohill. And let's be honest, can we talk a little bit more about Cameron Klein? I think Cameron Klein's been way better than Casey Toohill. I think Casey Toohill has an uphill climb to make this roster. I think the best one that I've watched is Kingsley Jonathan. I think he's clearly been the best one at camp. But then you do have Javon Solomon, who's a draft pick that has a lot of potential. So how do you navigate this? I don't think you have a spot on this team for more than one of these guys. So based on what's going to be the criteria that tips the scales in the favor of one guy versus the other? Is it the guy that's been the best player that has time in the system and Jonathan? Is it the untapped potential and upside on a rookie deal of Javon Solomon? Casey Toohill's the most experienced player, but is he that good? And then Cameron Klein's kind of been around and feels like a useful developmental player that I think has taken steps. A lot to sort out there. Fascinated to see how it all comes together. Now, linebacker, to me, it's very clearly Dorian Williams' development. And I think you've seen a lot of good from Dorian Williams, particularly the downhill ability. Fast, physical. He fires downhill, and he attacks the line of scrimmage with a lot of intent. I love that about him. And I think the team, based on what I've observed, very clearly looks at him as the 3rd linebacker. So in instances when they did go 3 linebackers with Bernard and Milano, Dorian Williams was the guy on the field. Whenever Matt Milano had a vet rest day, Dorian Williams got those reps. And so I think he's on the depth chart very clearly linebacker 3, but how much has he really developed? To me, it really comes down to coverage. And his coverage reps in preseason are going to be something that I pay close attention to. And I saw some issues in practice. There were plenty of instances when the Bills were working play action, and they would work play action boot, and Dorian Williams would see the fake, and he'd sell hard down inside, attack the line of scrimmage, and then meanwhile, there's just crossers going right across the field. He's not capping the routes. He's not carrying anything, and guys are getting wide open. Exactly what happened against the Giants and the Patriots last year when he got extended play, and at least in one of those games, he got benched. And you saw those issues show up once again. Like, you've got to be able to feel that out and feel those routes behind you and get depth and cap routes, or else guys are just going to be shrieking across the middle of the field wide open. It happened in practice. And then there's other times where it's just a traditional coverage drop, and he's just covering grass. He's not feeling eligibles. He's not closing. He's just literally dropping to grass. And so the coverage instincts, just to me, continue to not be there. Does that change in preseason? I'm fascinated to find out, because it certainly looks like he's the favorite. It's his job to lose as LB3, but he's got to be able to play in space and cover. He's athletic enough. There's no athletic limitations. It's instincts. Can he develop those coverage instincts and not be an issue if he has to play for the Bills this year outside of rundown snaps? All right, we got to talk back seven, special teams, and a little bit of coaching staff stuff here on the other side of it. Be sure to stick with me. I love sports. I love them so much and never want them to stop. But as the playoffs wind down, we get fewer games, and the sports aren't sportsing like I want them to. But FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime that I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a booster bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. And so head on over to FanDuel.com. They have some really cool football's futures bets that I really like, particularly for the Bills. Right now, you can get Josh Allen at plus 155 to top 4,000 passing yards this season. Plus odds. I love that. I like this one, too. How about James Cook? You think he's getting 1,000 rushing yards this year? You can get that at plus 140. You think Dalton Kincaid is a 1,000-yard receiving tight end? You can get that at plus 270. So head on over to FanDuel.com and start making the most of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. All right, let's talk back seven, special teams, and coaching staff. Cornerback, the prevailing thought is Kaiir Elam. Kaiir Elam's had a great camp, playing confident, making big splash plays, super competitive. You have to love what you've seen from Kaiir Elam, which is great, but how does that factor in on game days? I don't think you're going to play Elam over Benford or Douglas, or do you work him in? Do the Bills rotate? They've done it in the past. Do they do it again? I think the Kaiir Elam conversation is fascinating. Now, I certainly, and I've been talking about this, I think your 2025 corner duo with Rasul Douglas going to be north of 30 and expiring contract, I think it's probably going to be Kaiir Elam and Christian Benford. But what do you do this year? What do you do this year about that? That's interesting. Do you work them in? Do you rotate? I think there's a lot to figure out, but Kaiir Elam is making that conversation interesting, and I'm curious to see how that continues during training camp. I think slot depth is another big conversation because there's a lot of options, right? Cam Lewis, but Cam Lewis is now playing a lot of safety. Jamarcus Ingram's gotten work there. Daequan Hardy's got their work there. Corey Couch has made some noise. I think the slot depth's a really fun conversation behind Taron Johnson, but Kaiir Elam's a prevailing thought at corner. At safety, it's Damar Hamlin, right? We've talked all about these injuries. Mike Edwards, week to week. Cole Bishop, week to week. Those are new players. Those guys have been brought in. One's a rookie. One's a free agent signing. And what does Mike Edwards actually have with the team? 3 practices? I like Mike Edwards, but we know that this coaching staff has to believe in you and has to trust you if they're going to put you into a prominent role. What has Mike Edwards been able to achieve on the field that inspires this team that he's ready to go and communicate and be the safety alongside Taylor Rapp? Probably nothing. Damar Hamlin has. He's a guy that started a fair amount of games. He's the most experienced safety in this system. And he's the hot name. And so for all these conversations about the injuries at safety, are we really just talking about backups that are hurt? Is the Bills' preferred starting pair of safeties Taylor Rapp and Damar Hamlin? Might be. Hamlin got the first day of first-team reps at training camp. He's gotten the most reps. Of course, a lot of that's injury-driven, but it feels like all the momentum is there. And so we'll see how it plays out. We'll see what happens if Bishop and Edwards can come back. But I think this might be Damar Hamlin's job to lose. And every day that he continues to get those reps and further cements himself as the most tenured and experienced player in the system, I think the more likely it is that it's his job to lose. So we'll see. But the story here is Damar Hamlin. He's also the healthy one. And I think that matters a ton. You heard Sean McDermott talk about this on Sunday, where it's hard to help the team if you're not on the field. It's hard to learn the system and get reps and time on task when you're not on the field. Damar Hamlin's on the field, and he's the most experienced. I think this matters a lot. When it comes to special teams, I think the punter battle is obviously over. Sam Martin. Certainly we're looking for the bounce back year from Tyler Bass. But I think the key to unlocking a lot of these roster decisions for the Bills is who wins the punt returner job. And you have three guys that are working at that. Andy Isabella, KJ Hamler, and Daequan Hardy. And I feel like they want it to be Daequan Hardy. Isabella and Hamler, their involvement with the first-team offense is pretty small. They don't really do much. But Hardy's the guy that's a draft pick, cost control for 4 years, gives you speed, depth at slot corner. And I feel like they want it to be him, but he has to prove it. And he'll prove that by securely catching the football and making good decisions as a punt returner during preseason. And him filling that role and then also helping on kick return. And you saw a lot of different guys get opportunities to kick return, but it's also a very similar cast of characters. Hamler, Isabella, Hardy, but then you saw Mack Hollins, you saw Ty Johnson, you saw Ray Davis get those chances as well. I think you look at all of those players and you see varying levels of probabilities of who's going to make the roster. But the common denominator of both spots, to me, is Daequan Hardy, in addition to Hamler and Isabella, but Hardy's the one that, to me, has the most momentum. If he can prove himself in preseason, those opportunities in preseason are going to matter a ton. I think it's going to be him that winds up being one of the primary returners, and I think that unlocks so much of this overall roster picture and who's going to stay and who's going to go. The last thing I want to talk about is coaching. And the vibe that I have for Sean McDermott is just, it feels different to me. I think he's back to CEO mode. And you watched him last year. He's the defensive coordinator. His involvement was very different. This year, he's back to just, hey, standing back behind the play, barking out, hey, it's 3rd and 6, everyone. 3rd and 6 from the 25. I mean, that's all he's doing. Babich is running the defense. Babich is calling the defense. That was such a big storyline of who's going to call the defense. I don't think there's a single piece of information that suggests that it's going to be Sean McDermott, because if it was, you certainly feel like he'd be calling the defense and being a little bit more involved. He is hands off. His coaches, his staff, his support staff is doing their job, and he is in full CEO mode. And I think that's a healthy place for Sean McDermott to be. And think about the support that he has, not just with Joe Brady and Bobby Babich as the coordinators, and both those guys being around. I think Joe Brady, of course, knew as the permanent OC, but I mean, this is his 4th year on the team. Bobby Babich has been the protege of Sean McDermott for a number of years, groomed for this opportunity, and here it is. And then also think about guys like John Perry, the official that the Bills hired to help with challenge decisions and that type of stuff, right? Even his game day management coaches, like, he's got a support staff in place. He's letting them operate, and then he gets to kind of just be this CEO figurehead, which is a great place for him to be. Now, every coach has a different appetite for what they're going to do and what their involvement's going to be. But I think for Sean McDermott, I like him in this role, CEO mode, and trusting that staff and just leading from a different vantage point. And I think that's really healthy for Sean and this football team and where they want to go. So there you have it, folks. Spent a week with the Bills. Those are my prevailing thoughts at every position. It's a big week here on the podcast. I have some more news maybe to share later on in the week. The Bills play on Saturday, preseason game. Chicago Bears. All 22 reviews are coming. We got herd mentality to do. We got so much to do this week on the podcast. I'm fired up. We got games coming. New football is happening. That means there's a lot to break down, a lot to get ready for. Don't miss anything. Make sure that you are subscribed. Would love it if you took a second to rate, review, and share the podcast. Have a great rest of your day. Go Bills. And I look forward to catching up with you again real soon.